The demands of running your business can put huge stress on your marriage or your relationship with your significant other. And unfortunately, for many business owners, the pressure can lead to relationship breakdowns, and for others, they just experience relationships which are not what they want them to be. Don't miss this episode if you want to understand how to have both a successful business and a great marriage. Business, marriage, and
being business partners or colleagues.
It can be amazing because you're in the same boat, you're building a great future, you're building a dream.
It's hard enough having a business or hard enough having a marriage, but when you got both, those priorities really get tested.
Because you 100% can have both.
And you're always saying yes, yes, yes to all the things you have to do in business, but you won't say yes to making time for them.
And the flip side is, we see a lot of relationships really repair and grow as people work on their business and improve their business and improve their relationships as well.
How do we do this? How do we do them both at the same time?
Alrighty, we've arrived at the podcast with your host, Tony Fraser-Jones, here with my good mate and co-host, Phil Smith. My man,
g'day.
You doing well?
Always, mate. Always ready to roll.
This is going to be a juicy topic today.
Yeah, let's get straight into it.
Let's do it, man. What are we on about today?
Well, basically, it's really about how the best things in life can also be the toughest. And, like business can be like that. It can be great. It can also be really hard. And honestly, marriage can be like that too. It can be amazing. And it can be really tough at times. I think if you put the two together, where you have business and a marriage all in one, well, then you're in for some real fun and some challenges too.
You are, and we see it working with our clients in our $1 Million Tradie program all the time that, relationships, intimate relationships come under real pressure. And this is important because the quality of your intimate relationships is largely determined of the quality of your life. If you want to have a great life, you want to have a great relationship with your significant other. And if it's not strong, it drags everything down. It's super stressful. It is no fun at all. And the flip side is, we see a lot of relationships really repair and grow as people work on their business and improve their business and improve their relationships as well. So it's very exciting when it's done right, and it's super challenging, if there's a lot of stress involved with this. So really today we want to dig into, why this is so stressful, because there are some massive stresses from having a business, and how to be successful with business and having a great marriage as well, because you 100% can have both. And it's not only the business, get that right to have a great relationship. If you have a great relationship, that can really help the business as well. So it's a back and forth sort of two-way street, because if your relationship's good, you're going to feel happy, you've got good energy, you got someone who's really in your corner and supporting you, and that helps you do the stuff you want in your business. You want someone who shares your values and is going to help you rather than sort of takes you down and makes it difficult for you to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you got a story to kick us off.
I do. Not really a story. It's just a little wee anecdote.
Love an anecdote.
A little anecdote. Warren Buffett, he was asked the secret of a happy marriage, and his response was low expectations.
Yeah, well, at least you won't be disappointed, right?
It's actually pretty clever, because most problems in life result through unmet expectations, right? You expect something from your partner and they don't deliver it, so you get annoyed, and the cycle of frustration and criticism and resentment, all that sort of stuff kicks off.
Honestly, and it's worse today than it probably was. It's getting worse all the time. Yeah. I mean, we always say, well, the rise of social media and all this, but honestly, like, I think there's just a real message that's being pushed out there about compatibility, and people have real expectations around how compatible you should be with your romantic partner. And especially in a marriage, and all the similarities you should have, and all of the views that you should share, and when you really get down to it, I mean, for somebody to have the same political views, goals, aspirations, sense of humor, for them to have the same values, for them to have all of the same interests, hobbies, and also all the same sexual preferences. The thing is, for all of this to line up in perfect compatibility, you're probably looking for one in about 1 or 2 billion people. And so the chance of finding that person anywhere in your vicinity is pretty low.
It probably sounds like you need to marry yourself, actually. That's
yeah, which, hey, look, some people are into. But I think the fact is, if you want to have a successful marriage, you're not going to be perfectly compatible in every single way, and you have to learn to love each other's differences. And work with each other as a team, not just expect more of each other, because that's just not going to work.
Yeah, so expectations are important, for sure. And look, if you don't, if you struggle with this and the marriage is not strong and it comes under a lot of pressure, it's tough. You do feel guilty about working. If things aren't good, you feel like, well, I should be somewhere else rather than working away on my business. You can actually feel really angry and unappreciated for your work, and I think that's the hallmark of relationships that aren't healthy, or where you're put under a lot of pressure from your business, and that flows back to the relationship. You're putting all this effort in to try and make things good for your family and your partner, and they don't quite get it, and that can cause a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, when things are stressful for the business, it flows through to to intimacy, to physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, all that sort of stuff. Things kind of cool off in the bedroom.
Yeah, well, they can do. Yeah, especially when all of the other things are involved. So why don't we talk about what happens when your business or your marriage balance is right?
Yeah, I think you have this tremendous feeling of togetherness and team, like a team thing. So you're in something together, which is awesome, and you feel supported and encouraged. And I think that's a real gift that you get from a great marriage. And there will be greater intimacy, both emotional and physical as well, when you feel happy and satisfied with where you're at with life. That definitely flows through. And as I said before, like the energy of the relationship actually feeds back to the business, and so you're bringing a lot of good energy from home into the business, which makes that work much better as well. And there's a weird thing with business and relationships. Like if your business grows, you need to develop as a person, and you don't do that in isolation. And so if you're developing as a person and becoming a better leader and understanding people better and being more assertive and making good decisions and being more respectful and learning to listen better, those skills are very transferable to your relationship as well, and vice versa. And so, you can actually get to some really new levels of relationship as you are both growing as people, which is pretty cool. And that just brings a sense of peace and contentment, and that's awesome. If you don't get that right, you can be in a world of hurt. I have a friend who is an anaesthetist, and he said he got taught the 3 rules of wealth creation by a senior anaesthetist when he was still a registrar. He was a reg, and he said the rules were this. The first rule was stay married to the same woman. The second rule is if you get divorced, never remarry. And the third rule is if you get divorced and remarry, never have kids with the second wife. And those were the 3 rules to wealth creation, because it just creates a bunch of hurt and pain financially, but also more importantly emotionally and mentally as well.
Yeah, sure. And hey, look, no shade on anybody that's done that.
No, not at all.
But makes a funny little story.
Yeah. I think people who've been down that path will understand that
there's
it's really challenging.
Difficulty along the way,
it's
right?
tough.
Absolutely. So let's look at what makes business and marriage a tough combination.
For me, the first thing is that business creates a lot of stress. When there's stress in life, right? But when you are under pressure and stress from your business, when you've got lots of jobs to do, competing demands, team members letting you down, clients who need stuff, perhaps your cash flow is not quite where you want it to be, and you're not sure how you're going to pay the bills, pay wages, let alone pay the bills for your family, that creates a lot of stress. And so what that does, it puts people into that fight or flight response. So you're kind of super stressed out. You become very urgent. You become very now focused, and that leads to irritability. That leads to anger. That leads to a short temper, and basically your energy goes down, and you're not your best self. You just can't bring your best self to your relationship, and so that same irritability and stuff. It's actually quite hard to, if you felt like that all day. I don't know if you can do it. You'd be a better man than me. It's very hard just to flick the switch when you get home and be a completely different person. Particularly if the stress is ongoing. If it's a couple of days, that's a different thing, right? But if it's chronic ongoing stress, it does wear you down, and you only have one battery, and if that battery's sucked dry from your work, well, you don't get home and just get a fresh battery. And so it's the same thing, and you're just not bringing your best self to the relationship, and you actually can come across as a tired, irritable, angry person, which is not a lot of fun to be with. It's not obviously good for growing a good relationship.
No, absolutely not. And second one for me is, when you're in business, you can often have a lack of time. I mean, it doesn't matter how good or bad your business is. There are times when business takes over and you just got a lot to do, a short time to do it, a lot of things on your plate. And, that does eat into your time and how much time you're able to dedicate to other things. For example, nurturing your relationship. It can start to feel very resented when it feels like to your partner that you won't say no to clients or jobs, and you're always saying yes to all the things you have to do in business, but you won't say yes to making time for them. And so, when you're saying yes to these clients, these jobs, these team members, and you're doing all of this extra work and you're putting in late nights or weekends or whatever you have to do at the time, that is less time for your partner, less time for your family. And so it really can feel like you're choosing everything else but them, which is not a nice feeling. And I'm not saying that that's something that they should be okay with. I'm just saying it's something that is going to be a stress on your relationship, is that there are times when you don't have time, and it can be very difficult to then carve out time for the people that are most important to you. And you're going to get pulled pillar to post sometimes. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, if this goes on for a short period of time, people understand. But it's when this becomes a chronic pattern of behaviour. And if you're honest and you're listening, has this sort of thing been a chronic, ongoing thing, not for months, but for months and months and years? And for a lot of people in business, it just becomes the habit of working too hard and sacrificing time with the people who are important to you.
Yeah.
And also, there's pressure on priorities. Like, I guess it's the same thing as time in a way, but it's like, eventually, if you don't make time for people, they start to wonder about what your priorities are. That's simple. And if you see someone's calendar, that actually tells you a lot about what their values and their priorities actually are. And people will say, well, I have to do it, I'm doing it for you. Well, they maybe never asked you to work that long. Maybe they'd prefer that you didn't work that long and you're actually more available for them. So your partner just ends up feeling neglected. So you have to be quite honest about your priorities.
Yeah.
Big honesty call here.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're getting at, right? Is it's hard enough having a business or hard enough having a marriage, but when you got both, those priorities really get tested, and there's going to be times when each one needs you more or each one needs you less, and sometimes they both need you more at the same time, and that's where you can get in a pickle. I like to think, the iron triangle, when you're talking about getting a project done, there's the iron triangle where people want price, they want speed, and they want quality, but you can't have all three. And so, there's kind of an iron triangle with your time and your priorities, right? Like, you've got your business, you got your relationships, your marriage, your children, and you got yourself. And so often, when you've got a lot going on, one of those things is going to suffer. So you're either going to be prioritizing that time for the marriage and the kids, or that and the business, or maybe it's the marriage and the kids and you, or maybe it's you and the business, but it's actually very hard to juggle all three in balance, and so your priorities really need to be in order. And I really do find that there's two things that'll test you in life and find out your weak spots and really put you to that test. And one of them's being in business, definitely can be trying, and you get found out sometimes.
Emotionally and mentally.
Absolutely. And the other one is a marriage. It's, again, emotionally and mentally, it's really going to test you, and it's going to find your weak spots. When you're in a marriage that you can't hide, people are going to find everything there is to know about you, everything you're good at, everything you're bad at too. And it'll test you, and it's hard when you got them both at the same time. Yeah, and let alone adding kids.
You add children into that, and we both have children. I have 4, and you have 3. So we're doing our bit to keep up the population,
proliferate the
species, which is good. But that's a whole other kettle of fish added into it as well. So there can be a lot of stress that makes this challenging, and I think that the place where I land with this is. We know that there's a lot of stress going on, and it's important to acknowledge that. But for me, in all seriousness, many relationships that break down or suffer, it's not necessarily because the relationship is actually broken necessarily or irrecoverable. It's because the people in the relationship weren't really aware of the impact and that the stress of their life was actually having on their relationship. Or put that another way, if they weren't so stressed, the relationship would be way better. In fact, it may not be a problem. And people just don't realise that. And there's many situations which we've seen through our work. We call profitable tradie, it's about the numbers, but really it's about having a great life, and relationships part of that. So if you can take the stress off, that's awesome. Many situations are savable and can be improved. And again, that's not to throw shade on anyone who's been through a relationship breakdown. It's tough. And you've learned some stuff there, and it's that's really tough. But there's a lot of times when the stress is actually a massive contributor to the problem, but we don't realise that, and the business just piles that stress on.
Yeah, it really adds fuel to the flame, which is not helpful, but it is a real situation. Yep. So why don't we talk about how we actually can fix this? How do we do this? How do we do them both at the same time?
Yeah. Funny thing is, for me, a big part of success in having a business and a great relationship is not even about the relationship at all. It's about actually starting with yourself and figuring out how you can work on yourself so that you can be a better partner. And so in some senses you have to be a little bit selfish. And what that basically means is, how can I actually get my stress levels down? How can I actually get my headspace in a place where I can show up as a better version of myself, where I can show up with more energy, where I can show up with more compassion, empathy, support, for the person that I love.
Understanding,
because what you want behavior change from the other person. If you want that, typically you need to do the very thing that you want from them.
Yeah.
That's where you need to change. So you can't actually change your partner, and a lot of people try, and it honestly, I've tried this, and I've failed, and sometimes I forget, and I apologise, Brahman, I'm not smart, but if you try and change your partner, it's really difficult to do that. The only way to get change in relationship is actually change yourself, and that will, perhaps affect your partner and the interactions you have.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Effectively what we need to do is try and fix our own oxygen mask first, like you do on an aircraft. They say, don't put your kids' oxygen masks on, because by the time you've done that, you might not get a chance to do it.
That's
right. You're going to run out of oxygen and everyone's down. So you put your own one first so you can help everyone.
Yeah, that's it.
And what it means is, try and get some good sleep. Get a default calendar for your business so you've actually scheduled at least time to have lunch. Create some order in your day. Maybe put some time aside in there to actually meet with your partner or do something with your kids so it's locked into your calendar. Get some exercise. Get some rest. Look after yourself. That really makes a huge difference if you want to have a great relationship, because then you can bring the energy to work on the challenges and stuff that you've got as well. And it'll give you more energy to deal with the challenges of your business.
Yeah, totally. And I think the next one for me is prioritize your partner. And I know that this might seem really simple, but it's a lot easier said than done. Like, you really just have to start making some regular time for each other. And like we said, you get a default calendar for your business and your time at work. Well, hey, actually, get a default calendar for your personal time as well, so that you can start to make time for the people that matter in your life. Your partner, your kids, so that you make sure it happens. I mean, whether it's date nights, which you hopefully are doing regularly, or a few days away without the kids, but basically it's doing activities where it's just you and your partner, because it's easy to say, hey, look, we spend heaps of time together. We're together all night, every night, during dinner and bath time and bedtime and stories, and then we fall asleep on the couch 10 minutes after the kids are asleep because we're exhausted. It's like, that's not quality time together. And I think actually making time for each other and doing stuff together, just the two of you, which I know it's difficult, especially if you've got young kids. I know it's difficult, but you need to find a way to make that happen, because it's where you can connect and nurture the actual relationship between the two of you, rather than trying to say you're nurturing it when really you're just playing your role as parents and everything that you do at home. And so that requires saying no to others. Sometimes it's clients are being demanding, they want more from you, or your team's being demanding, they want more from you, or the business itself is being demanding, it wants more from you. And sometimes you need to be able to say no and prioritize your partner, so that you can actually make sure that you're watering that plant, so to speak, because every relationship is like a plant. They need different amounts of water, but even a succulent needs some water. And your marriage is the same. Another good idea, I know you do this, is having a regular marriage meeting.
Yeah, we do. We schedule it in. We do it on a Monday evening, and there's actually an agenda for it, which you need to complete beforehand. And
now, just quickly, if you're thinking Tony's a stuffy guy with this, hey, look, maybe, but this does work, and it's not a silly idea, guys. This really works.
Like, we have the format is really simple. It's, what are your wins this week? They can be personal or marriage related. Second question is, what are you grateful for about your spouse or your wife this week? And the third question is there anything that frustrated you this week that you'd like to share? Big thing about relationships is don't let resentments build up or frustrations build up, because small pebble in your shoe is fine for a day, but if you walk with that for months and years, you'll end up having your foot amputated.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what happens in relationships. So get the things that are frustrating off your chest. Doesn't need to be blame, but it's really important to talk about them.
Yeah.
Next question is there anything you'd like to talk about in general? So maybe a bigger topic you guys want to dig into and talk about, that's really helpful. And then the last thing is an action plan. And we have a question is, what's one thing you could do next week to nurture our relationship? And we do that. And that's it's massively helpful. It just gives you a focus and you reconnect and you're actually talking about your relationship, not just doing life.
Yeah, absolutely. So super powerful thing you can do. I think another point could be, don't make the mistake of not, actually just doing this for the family. You got to be doing it for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is a big thing as a bloke as well. Sometimes we feel like we've got to provide. It's probably not very PC today, but it's just the way it is, really, for most blokes. That's how we were brought up and how we think. Got to provide and do that for our family. We've got to work hard and take care of them. Maybe ask your partner, do they want you to be working all the time? Is that what's really important to them? Do they need the flashest of everything? Or maybe they just want your time.
Yeah.
Because love is often spelt Time.
Yeah.
And Time shows that you care. It shows that you're a priority, and that's actually really, really important.
Yeah, I think this is massive because, I mean, definitely I relate to this. I find it that one of my biggest ways that I find self-worth is whether or not I'm providing for the family in a way that I think is is good. So like there's a level of comfort I want to provide, or otherwise I don't feel as adequate. But the reality is they probably don't care about that at all. I know my kids don't really care at all. They just want to hang out. So it's funny because like you can really miss the mark with what you think people want from you. And I think this leads me to the next point, which is when you're working together.
Well, this is interesting, right?
Right. Yeah.
Business, marriage, and
being business partners or colleagues, which again are two different dynamics again. Like a lot of the time we've got let's be honest, again, it's a pretty male-dominated industry, the trades, and a lot of the time, guy starts business because he's great at the trade, guy gets out of his depth because he needs help in the office, guy begs wife to come and help him because he's drowning, wife often begrudgingly goes and helps.
Because she's a lovely person.
Lovely person, she's happy to help, really wants to help, but she didn't dream of being, working in a tradesman's office. But the hard part is one of two things can happen. She wants to help you. She don't want to be your employee. Or the other thing that can happen is, she comes in as a full-on business partner, and it may be not her dream at first, but then she learns to love it, and then you get a whole bunch of dynamics as the business changes about like how do both of your roles dynamically change, and there's just a lot of things you need to figure out. So I think like one of the first things about working together is you need to have really clear roles, and this is about knowing your job description, where do each other's roles beginning and end, and how will you held accountable, and how will you act in terms of being co-workers, which is not the same as how you act in terms of being romantic partners, because the fact is those two functions, co-workers versus romantic partners, or business partners versus romantic partners, have quite different rules and expectations. And so laying those rules and expectations out, A, for your work life, and B, for your personal life, help you not to get those grey areas where things get confusing and people feel let down. And I think you got to have rules for everything. It could be about spillover, it could be about covering each other's tasks, it could be about when you begin and end work chat. I know one helpful thing is if you come home, you don't want to still be talking about work at 9 p.m. over the kitchen table. It's like, when's the off button? You got to have laid all this out. It's just going to help you give a lot more clarity and help you function in both arenas in the best way you possibly can.
Just on the point with working together in a business, people think, it's probably not going to be a great thing, but to be honest, for some people, it's an amazing thing for their relationship.
It can be great.
It can be amazing because you're in the same boat, you're doing the same thing, you're building a great future, you're building a dream, you're feeding off each other's energy, you really work well together, you love each other, and you actually like each other as well, which is a double win.
And you've got the same stuff in your mind, you have the same concerns and dreams.
This person has 100% got your back. You can trust them implicitly. That's a real blessing.
Yeah.
And so that can work really well as well.
Yeah, and I mean, of all the business partners you can have, I mean, one of the biggest things you want in a business partner is trust and support. And I mean, who better than the person you're married to? I mean, you should have the most trust and support. You'd hope.
I mean, second best would be you, mate.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks, man.
There we go.
Back at you. But I think the real thing here is it's like, even, you look at business partners, for example, me and you, Tony, I mean, we have rules and expectations about how we act as business partners. But doubly important when you're romantic partners as well, which, by the way, we're not, but, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah, it's moving on.
Yeah, moving on. But, yeah, super important you lay down those ground rules.
Yeah. There's another thing that I want to talk about, and, in this day and age, it may not be politically correct, but I don't care because it's important and it's true. You've got to be really careful about managing the relationship energy. There is only so much energy in a relationship and in a house, and if all that energy is going outside, it's directed outside of the house, you will find the relationship runs out of energy. And what I mean by that is if you've got two people in a marriage who are both killers out there, crushing it for the world, massive careers, massive jobs, that can be really challenging because they're high energy and the energy is all pointed outwards. And so if that's the case, it can work, but you've got to be very conscious about the energy you put back in.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a relationship, there has to be a bit of give and take. If one person's got a lot going on, the other person just needs to slide in and just take care of things on the inside a little bit more, and so forth, back and forth, because I see this a lot. Two massive personalities with outward energy, there's none left for the relationship.
Yeah, well, it gets difficult when you start looking at who's going to do what. If we're both out there busting our ass, in the business all day, it can be a lot of resentment around, well, who's going to vacuum the house or who's going to cook dinner? And again, ideally, you both are pulling your weight at home as well, but you want to be clear about who's doing what so that everybody feels that it's fair. Who's picking the kids up from school, who's dropping them off to sports practice, who's going to stay home when they're sick, that kind of stuff. It gets very, very confusing, and you need to have an
That's
agreement.
right, and so be very mindful of the energy, and if that energy is a lot of it is outward facing, that's fine. Structure it so that it works, and that means you need to think about the help you need in your business, in your marriage, and your business.
Yeah, in your business.
But do you need to get a nanny to help support with the kids? Do you need someone to run your kids to their sports and their after school activities? Do you need a cleaner to do all that stuff? Can you get a cook to help cook the meals? All that stuff is really important because you want your house to run well as well. And whether that's mum or dad or mum or whoever does that, it's really important. You want a place where everyone can come back and it's calm, and people can kind of get their energy back. And this is a real challenge. So think about the relationship energy and be really intentional about it, because that really counts. And if you deplete that, it's like a bank account that gets bankrupt. If it stays bankrupt for too long, the resentments kick in, the fights start, and all that bad stuff.
And I think for me, the real difficult thing is that when we assume who should do what based on, potentially silly, traditions or you assume default parent sort of syndrome, all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, if you're deliberate about just talking about who's going to do what and how you'll both channel energy back into the home, then the home becomes a great place for both of you to be, and so does business. And so working together can be actually really great, and you can get that ratio and that balance really well. But you have to be deliberate. You can't just wing it.
Yeah, and if both of you are so stressed out with your jobs and your careers, again, you're going to have two people who are unresourceful and stressed in the relationship, which is really difficult. And I think sometimes the key for a relationship to last is that only one of you wants to get out of the relationship at a time. And as long as one of you wants to stay, and that works pretty well, because you can cut the slack for the other person.
Well, it's kind of like Married at First Sight, only not.
Yeah. Well,
my wife loves their show. Yeah.
It's a good yarn, that's for sure.
Yeah. Not my favourite, but my wife loves it.
That's right.
All right. Do you want to get on the Gottman Institute?
Yeah,
it's an interesting one.
Yeah. There's a bunch of research around this as well, about what it takes to make a marriage work, and there's a bunch of research, and if you Google the Gottman Institute, they have a bunch of research around what makes a marriage work, and they can actually predict with a high degree of accuracy which relationships will last and which won't, which is amazing. And they studied a bunch of people, thousands of people over a period of time, and they know what works. And there's a bunch of stuff like even little things like when people turn towards each other is a massive indicator of relationship success. So what we mean by that is if you're talking to your partner and they turn towards you and acknowledge you, that's a little bid for connection. And if you do that consistently, that's really good for the relationship. But if you don't, if they start talking to you and you sort of turn away or ignore them, that's ignoring their bid for connection, and that is very caustic to a relationship long term. Just a tiny little thing that they observed. So think about that. That makes a huge difference. Yeah. Expressing fondness and admiration for each other, like a culture of respect and admiration and support, that's huge. Trust obviously was a big one. Knowing the inner game of the inner mental game of your spouse is huge. How they actually think and what their hot buttons are, what their values are, what their risks are, what their risk profile is. All that sort of stuff really helps you stay on the same page. And they found that there are 4 things that are absolutely caustic to relationships, and they call them the 4 deadly horsemen that you want to avoid. So, if you've got the business pressure, you'll find that it's more difficult not to avoid these. You've got to be really careful for them. And the first one is criticism. So criticism is incredibly toxic for your relationship. The next one is contempt, where you just kind of don't rate them.
Well, I remember the statistic on this. It was something crazy like it when they were interviewed couples. If they could detect contempt, they had something like a 94% chance of divorce within 5 years, which was crazy. That stood out to me massively.
So contempt is a massive problem. The third one is defensiveness. So if you're not willing to have a discussion with your partner, or you're always denying that there's a problem, or you don't take any responsibility for anything, that's a huge problem. And the last one is stonewalling, which is where you just withdraw and ignore and don't talk about stuff. You're basically just silent. That's a big problem. So if any of those 4 are happening, look out for that. You can turn that around 100% by making some time and putting some effort in. But if you find yourself going down those paths, you've got to be really careful. And if the business is putting a lot of stress on you and you're sort of drifting into that part, maybe it's time to pull back on the business stress. Get a business coach to help you get your business sorted out, save your marriage.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, if you're noticing those horsemen, the first thing, like you said, Tones, is firstly look inward. If you're noticing them in your partner, then just be really honest and see if you're noticing them in yourself. Are you projecting those same 4 things? Because often there's work that you need to do on yourself, and that's, again, something that that we really help with is being able to help you work through those things so that you're putting forward your best self, because that's often going to be reflected.
Because it's the most important thing in your life, really, is your relationship. So you want to put your best foot forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, should we land this plane?
Let's do it. Now, you can 100% have a super successful business and a great marriage. And in fact, a great marriage is actually going to help with business success. And the key to all of this really is to manage your own mental state, your energy, so that you can show up for your partner or your wife, your husband, as your best self. And you've got to prioritize your relationship over everything else if it's important to you, because the quality of the life that you have is determined by the quality of the relationships you have with your intimate partner. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.